football season's right around the corner, and here's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm going to rank heading into the year. The first guy's Patrick Mahomes, no doubt about it, of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes, what a first few seasons of his NFL career, including a Super Bowl championship, and last season losing in the Super Bowl, though, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So right here, Mahomes, he's going anywhere from the second to the third round in most fantasy drafts. And last year, another monster year for him, 4,740 passing yards, 38 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 308 rushing yards on the ground, 2 rushing touchdowns last year. And this season, his projections 4,925 yards, 41 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 310 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. So obviously, Patrick Mahomes, he's the best quarterback in all of football, in my opinion. Now, it's not even close, really, what this guy could do with his arm strength, throwing the ball down the field, and the dynamic weapons he has in his offense, like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So this team, they're stacked once again. Mahomes, he's going to put up numbers. And this guy, he does it all like I mentioned here. The only down thing with him is injuries over the last couple seasons, missing a few games here and there. But right here, he's the undisputed number one pick at the quarterback position. And you can't obviously go wrong with him. So he's going to be number one once again this season, heading into drafts. Number two is Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So a monster breakout year it was for Josh Allen last year. And he was a guy who went undrafted in some fantasy leagues or in the later rounds. But last season, Stephon Diggs definitely helped Allen out, and he turned it into a huge contract extension and a monster fantasy year last season for Allen. 4,544 yards, 37 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 421 rushing yards, and 8 touchdowns, and including a receiving touchdown as well. So 46 total touchdowns last season for the big-armed righty in Josh Allen. And this guy, he's a man amongst boys, in my opinion. And he's a guy as well going anywhere from the 4th to 5th round of most fantasy drafts. And I don't think last season was a fluke. He gets a lot of fantasy points on the ground as well, like Mahomes, like a Lamar Jackson. And he showed it last year with the rushing touchdowns. And this season, they projected his numbers just to be a little bit lower. 4,485 yards, 34 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 400 rushing yards, and 8 TDs. So that's another season with the projections this year over 40 touchdowns. And if he stays healthy, he's going to be a monster once again, in my opinion. They got great weapons over there in Buffalo. Like I mentioned, him and Diggs. Maybe they could get something out of the backfield from Morse and Singletary this season. But Emmanuel Sanders signed on as well. You still got Cole Beasley. So they got a lot of impressive guys over there. And Josh Allen, once again, is going to have a big year. And going into the season, I rank him as the number 2 quarterback. The third guy's Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So Lamar Jackson winning the MVP 2 seasons ago. Last year, he was the first quarterback, him or Mahomes. It was a tight neck who was going in fantasy football. But Jackson here, it was a bad start for him last year. The first 8-10 weeks of the season, he couldn't do much, but he still ended the season with a huge year, 2757 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He broke 1,000 yards rushing the football, which is obviously an astronomical number for a quarterback. 7 rushing touchdowns and 4 fumble losses. So Lamar, we know once he gets it going and he hits that open field, he's the best playmaking quarterback in terms of making things happen and running the football. No doubt about it in that aspect. And like I mentioned, even though he started off bad last season, he finished the season strong and had a monster year. And this season, the projections, 3,330 yards, 32 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. They got him going over 1,000 yards again, rushing 1,080 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. So right here, he's putting up number 2 running back fantasy numbers and big quarterback numbers as well this season. It wouldn't surprise me to see Lamar Jackson the number 1 quarterback when the season's all said and done again this year. But right here, going into the season, I have him at number 3 because there's more consistency, especially throwing the football with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen over Lamar. But Lamar, he's going about 4th, 5th round as well. And these quarterbacks, they're pretty tight, these top 3 guys. These are definitely the first-tier guys. And then after that, it's not that much of a drop-off, but it's definitely a drop-off in the next tier of guys from these first 3. The next guy is Russell Wilson. I have 4th ranked on my rankings going into the season. Some people, they have him 5th or 6th, I've seen. But Russell Wilson last year, he got off to an amazing start, and then it just stopped for whatever reason. Maybe the play calling, maybe him and Pete Carroll clashed. And Russell Wilson last season, 4,212 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, still had 513 rushing yards, and 2 TDs. So another huge season it was for Russ. And Russ this season, he's still got the same cast of characters. You got Chris Carson there. You got 2 amazing receivers in DK Metcalf, who's going to be an animal again this season, and Tyler Lockett, and even picking up Everett, I think, from the Rams was a good pickup at the tight end position here for Russell Wilson. So Russ, he's going anywhere from the 6th to the 7th round, I've seen in most mock drafts, and I think he definitely could be a top 4 quarterback this season. And I like him over guys, obviously, like Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott, who I saw in a lot of rankings. They have Russell Wilson over. So Wilson this season, they're projecting him 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 477 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, he's not an elite runner anymore like he once was, like a Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, but he's still one of the better running quarterbacks in the league. But he runs when he has to, is Wilson. That's the difference with him and those guys. Sometimes those guys, they're just looking to run first than pass. But over the last few years here, Wilson's been a better pocket quarterback passer. And this guy's got one of the strongest arms in all the league. And he's not going to disappoint once again. He's definitely going to have a big season, in my opinion, is Wilson, and put up better or similar numbers to last year. The next quarterback at number 5 is Kyler Murray, the Arizona Cardinals. So Murray last season, he got a new weapon in DeAndre Hopkins, and he had a big second season in his NFL career. 3,971 yards, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 819 rushing yards, and a whopping 11 touchdowns from running the ball. So right there, that was a 37 total touchdown season for Murray. But Murray, the things he's got to work on is being a better pocket quarterback, and a lot of rollouts and just running with the football a lot. This guy, he takes too many chances, though, in my opinion, and could take a lot of big hits. But so far, he stayed healthy for the most part here, Kyler Murray, and he's a guy that's a dynamic player. And right now, I see in fantasy leagues, he's going over Lamar Jackson in a couple mocks I've seen. And obviously, he's going over Russell Wilson. But right here, safe in the 5th spot here is Kyler Murray. He's going to run the football. He's going to put up big numbers in that, no doubt about it. But he's got to be a better passer, and he's got to make better decisions. But this will be his 3rd season here in the league. And hopefully his IQ gets a little better this year, because he left some fantasy points out there towards the end of the season. And the projections this year, 4,130 yards, 30 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 845 rushing yards, and 7 TDs. So if he puts up numbers like that again, he's going to be an elite quarterback and a top 5 finish. And I think he'll be 5th coming into the season as a safe ranking here for Murray. The next quarterback's Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. So many people, they might be surprised I got Rodgers here at number 6 in the rankings going into the season. But Rodgers, each and every season, he pretty much puts up numbers. And last season, he made a point, was Rodgers, 4,299 yards, 48 touchdowns passing, 5 interceptions only. What a crazy ratio that is. 150 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. 51 touchdown total for Rodgers last year. I know he won the MVP. I doubt he duplicates that type of season once again. But he's going to have 40 touchdowns or more, in my opinion. I doubt he gets to 51 total this year. And the Packers here, he's coming back one more year. And I think he wants to prove to them one more time. Why would they take Love in the 2nd round a few years ago when Rodgers, obviously, he's still putting up prime season numbers, even though he's 37 years old. And this Packer team, they got a great offense. You got Aaron Jones over there. I know Jamal Williams left as the backup running back, but you got A.J. Dillon. You got Devontae Adams, who's a top 2-3 receiver in the league, even arguably number 1. You got Robert Tonyan, who was a good tight end. Randall Cobb's back in the mix. You got Valdez-Scantling. So there's a lot of guys over here for Aaron Rodgers. And obviously, he makes receivers and players better. And he's going to have another big season, in my opinion, this year. And I like him over guys like Justin Herbert, Tom Brady, and Dak Prescott going into the season. And the projections for Rodgers this year, 4,245 yards, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 130 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. So they're projecting him 38 total touchdowns. And we know he's always going to have a low interception rate. I don't think he's reached double digits in interceptions in 5+ years as Rodgers. So right here, he's a good guy to get on your team. And I think he's going to be number 6 heading into the season. Number 7, Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Bucks. And Tom Brady, he looked out of it the first few weeks of the season, but he was just adjusting to the playbook, adjusting to his new players, and he finished last season with a monster year and obviously another Super Bowl in his trophy case. So Brady last year, 4,633 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, 12 in those, only 6 rushing yards in that rushing touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns. So obviously Brady's not going to run the ball, but he's going to get those 1-yard QB sneaks here and there for the touchdowns. This guy, he's got probably one of the best offenses, off the best offense in all of football. They're loaded here, and they're all coming back here for Tampa Bay this season. You got Fournette, you got Ronald Jones, you even added Gio Bernard as well. You got Rob Gronkowski, Cameron Braid, O.J. Howard is your tight ends. You got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. So this guy, he's got weapons all over the field. And the numbers he could put up, once again, I think are pretty similar this season. And Tom terrific. He didn't show no signs of slowing down, especially in the second half of the season here. And there's no way I can't take him over some of these inconsistent guys or these younger guys as well who don't have the greatest of track records. And coming into the year, the projections are 4,655 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. So if he puts up those numbers, that's another huge season for Brady. And he didn't miss a beat last season. And I think he's going to come out of the gates once again with a hot start. The number 8 quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, I got ranking into the year of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Herbert, he came in guns blazing in the first 10 weeks where he played after Tyrod Taylor had to miss a game with a punctured lung with a bad injection. But anyway, ever since that, it was off to the races for Justin Herbert. And last season in his rookie year, 4,336 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He showed his wheels as well, 234 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. So right there, 36 total touchdowns for Herbert. He's got a great arm. He's got a good IQ. But the only down thing with him, obviously, was towards the end of the season, the numbers went down. He had a lot of fantasy games early in the year where he was scoring 30 or 40 points easily, and each and every week was Herbert. And coming into the season, he's still got a lot of good weapons on the roster. Obviously, you got Keenan Allen, one of the best possession wide receivers in all of the game. Jared Cook, I think, was a decent signing after losing Hunter Henry at the tight end position. You still got Mike Williams over there, who's a big target who can make plays. And you got Austin Eckler, who's a huge playmaker out of the field and obviously could catch a lot of balls and break tackles and reach the end zone on big 50, 60-yard plays. So Herbert, he's got a good arsenal of weapons, like I mentioned. And he's going to have another good season, in my opinion. And the projections this year for him, 4,515 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. So I think Herbert's a good quarterback. And I think ranking him number 8's not that bad, because I've seen him go earlier in drafts. But anywhere right now, he's going from the 7th to the 9th round range. And I think that's a good get for Justin Herbert. The next quarterback's number 9, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott, he got off to an amazing start last season for fantasy football owners. But he got hurt, obviously, with that devastating ankle dislocation, which was a gruesome and ugly injury. And now coming into training camp in the first few weeks of preseason here, he's got a nagging shoulder injury, and who knows how serious it is. But right now, with his health concerns, I don't know if he's 100% from the ankle, first of all. This Cowboy team, the offensive line, they pretty much got the same cast of characters, and they're getting up there in age, like the Tyron Smiths on this line. Zach Martin, he's been banged up the last couple of years, even though he's still one of the best offensive linemen in the league. But Dak Prescott, I just can't trust him over guys where I've seen him going over the Brady, the Rodgers, and the Herbert with these injury concerns and the inconsistencies over the last few years. Even though, like I mentioned, last year in 6 games, he had a crazy start, 1,856 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 in those, 93 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns for Dak. So Dak, he was going to have an MVP caliber season most likely if he didn't go down with the injury. And this season, they're projecting 4,130 yards, 30 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 845 rushing yards, which I think is a lot for a guy who came off the ankle injury and might be hesitant to run after getting hurt running and tackled the way he did with 7 rushing touchdowns. So right here, we'll see if Dak's 100%. And obviously, this Cowboy offense is going to be very explosive and a lot of ball games where they're going to have to play from behind or play in shootouts to win. You got Zeke Elliott, you got Tony Pollard, 2 good running backs obviously back there. You got CeeDee Lamb, who's going to be a monster, and people think he's going to be one of the best receivers in fantasy this year. You got Amari Cooper, who him and Dak have a great rapport. You got Michael Gallup, who could still make plays, and you got decent tight ends in Blake Jarwin and Schultz. But right now, I just got him ranked number 9 coming into the year at the quarterback position with the injury concerns. Who knows if he's going to be 100%, and even the offensive line concerns. Let's see if this offensive line could turn things around and be one of the better lines once again. After the last 2 or 3 seasons, it's been injured, inconsistent, and not blocking well. But right now, going into the year, I got Dak at number 9. Number 10, Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. So Tannehill, he got a big contract a few years ago from Tennessee, and he had another good year last year. Now you add Julio Jones to that offense. This is one of the most dynamic and explosive offense, in my opinion, in the league, with Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, who went off last season finally after having injury-riddled seasons. Anthony First, I think, could be a breakout tight end. And Ryan Tannehill, he's got good talent, but obviously in Miami it didn't work out because anything Adam Gase touches pretty much goes to waste. And now with Tennessee, he's found a new light with Mike Vrabel and the boys over there. And last season for Tannehill, 3,819 yards, 33 touchdowns. He showed some rushing ability with 266 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. And right here, this guy, like I mentioned, he's playing in one of the best offenses in all of the NFL right here. And he's going 9th to 10th round in some fantasy drafts. And I think that's a total steal, in my opinion, especially with the guys on that roster that I named. And coming into the year, they're projecting him 90 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 233 rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns. So right here, I think he'll reach that 4,000 yard mark. Obviously, the touchdowns are going to be a little bit down here for Tannehill when you got a cowbell and a workhorse machine in the backfield like Derrick Henry. But right here, I think Tannehill's a safe get, especially in those later rounds, like I mentioned. And he's definitely a quarterback that's going to finish in the top 10, and I got ranked number 10 coming into the season. The next quarterback's Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jalen Hurts, he impressed me last season, the few games he played for Philly, and now Phillies are giving him the keys to the quarterback position after obviously trading Carson Wentz in the offseason to the Indianapolis Colts. And Hurts, he can make a lot of plays with his legs. He's got a decent arm. Just his decision-making has to get better, but this guy could put up elite quarterback numbers, especially with his rushing ability. So last season with the Eagles in a few games, 1,061 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 354 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, and even caught a ball for 3 yards. And this season they're projecting Jalen Hurts 3,685 yards, 28 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. They're giving him 845 rushing yards, which I could see him rushing for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's definitely a dynamic player, and the Eagles obviously believe in him after trading Carson Wentz, who had MVP-type seasons for a couple years with Philly, to Indianapolis. And right now, Hurts, he's a quarterback going anywhere from the 7th to the 8th round for most part, and I think that's a decent place for him. And he's got some decent weapons as well over there in Philly. You got Jalen Reagor, you got Fulgham, who came out of nowhere last season for this team. You also got the Heisman Trophy winning receiver, Devonta Smith, in his rookie year. You got Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. You got a decent back in Sanders. So right here, he's got a good supporting cast as well as Hurts. And it wouldn't surprise me when it's all said and done this season to see him as a top 5 guy in fantasy points if he really gets hot and really gets things going. But right now, I'm going to keep it safe, and I got him ranked number 11 coming into the season. Number 12, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Burrow, he was the first pick of the NFL draft last season with the Cincinnati Bengals, and obviously his season was cut short with the torn ACL. But Joe Burrow, obviously, he showed flashes. He had 2 good receivers, and now he adds Jamar Chase to that offense, who was his receiver, obviously, in LSU in college football. And these guys got a great rapport. And Jamar Chase, he was probably the number one receiver in this NFL draft that passed. So last season for Burrow, 2,688 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 142 rushing yards, and 3 rushing TDs. So that torn ACL, it was a freak thing. It was unfortunate, but right now it looks like he's going to be ready for week 1 versus the Minnesota Vikings is Joe Burrow. And he's got an arsenal of weapons as well. Joe Mixon, if he could stay healthy in the backfield. Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd at the wide receiver position. And those are 3 good receivers that really can make plays and make Burrow have a good season. And they're projecting a huge one for him. 4,610 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 240 rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns. So right here, Joe Burrow, this Cincinnati team, they're probably going to be trailing a lot in games this season. In a tough division with the Ravens and Steelers, we're going to have a good year, in my opinion. And he's going to play a lot of catch-up. And he's got the wide receivers to do it with and mixing out of the backfield as well. So Burrow, I think he has a good second year coming in. And hopefully the knee's 100% and he's healthy. So he's number 12. Number 13, Big Ben Roethlisberger of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So a lot of people, they might be surprised I got Big Ben this high. But he's another guy in a huge offense, is Ben Roethlisberger. I know he's up there in age, obviously, but so are these other guys, right, like Rodgers and Brady, and they still put up numbers. And Big Ben last season had another good year, 3,803 yards, 33 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, only 11 rushing yards, and 2 two-point conversions. So obviously he don't run with the football anymore, but that's okay. He's got a huge arm, and he's got huge weapons in this offense. You got Deontay Johnson. You got breakout wide receiver rookie from last season, Chase Claypool, who had a monster year. You got a monster running back there now in Najee Harris, the rookie in the backfield. You got Juju Smith-Schuster. You got Eric Ebron. So there's so many people on this offense here that could help Big Ben have a big season. And I think he could put up top 13 numbers or even better this year if he really gets things going. So Big Ben right now, he's going in some fantasy leagues. The later rounds are undrafted. But right here, I like him over the likes of a Kirk Cousins, a Matthew Stafford, and a Matt Ryan coming into the season where many people have those guys obviously over Big Ben. But right now with this offense, I think even at his age, he could put up big numbers this season. The next quarterback's Kirk Cousins, Minnesota Vikings. So Kirk Cousins, he's got a dynamic offense. And this Viking team, they're going to be in a lot of close games or shootouts as well. And Kirk Cousins, he's going anywhere from the 10th to the 12th round in fantasy draft so far in these mocks I've seen. Last season, a big year. He had 4,265 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 156 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. So Kirk Cousins, he's got dynamic playmakers on this offense and a lot of big plays we saw last season, and I think we're going to see it again. Justin Jefferson, what a rookie year he had last year. Adam Thielen, one of the best possession receivers and best hands in the league. You got Dalvin Cook, who's a monster. And watch out for Irv Smith Jr. as well, who could be a breakout tight end. So a lot of good weapons in Minnesota. Obviously the fast track indoors as well for this team. And Kirk Cousins, I know there's been controversy with him. A lot of people don't think he's good, but for fantasy football, he's a better fantasy player in my opinion than a regular quarterback. And this is a guy you could wait to the later rounds, and he could put up big numbers where you could fill out other positions on your team. So they're projecting 4,160 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions on the season here for Kirk Cousins. So I think he could put up those numbers or even more with all the weapons he has as well over there in Minnesota. The next quarterback's Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. So after 10 plus seasons with the Detroit Lions, in the offseason, Stafford, he got traded to the Rams for Jared Goff and draft picks. And right here, Stafford, he enters a great offense, no doubt about it. But Stafford's a guy that's been up and down throughout his career, where he has big games in spurts, and then there's games where he gets single-digit fantasy points. So right now, he's going anywhere from the 9th to the 10th round in most fantasy drafts. And right here, the projections for Stafford coming into the year, 4,475 pass yards, 35 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Last year with the Lions, 4,084 yards, 26 touchdowns, 10 of those, 112 rushing yards on the season. But this year, he enters a big offense. Sean McVay's offense. Great receivers in that offense, obviously. He's got a big arm, and he's got a good running back as well. So you got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Deshaun Jackson, if he ever stays healthy, as a deep threat, and Tyler Higbee as well at the tight end position, and Darrell Henderson in the backfield. So a lot of good weapons here. But I think Stafford, there's going to be times where he's not going to have great games, and that's why I got guys who I've seen in other drafts go after him. Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Big Ben and Cousins before him, because there is inconsistencies with Stafford, and there is a long track record as well with injuries throughout his career. But I know he enters a great offense here in Los Angeles, and we'll see if he could have the big year. Would it surprise me if he finishes top 10 in fantasy points? No. But just coming into the season right now, I got him at number 15 because I think these guys could have better seasons than him coming in. The next quarterback's Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons. So Matt Ryan, we know he always puts up numbers. We know he's been one of the better fantasy quarterbacks over the last decade, but he's been inconsistent as well throughout his career here. Now you lose Julio Jones, who's obviously one of the better wide receivers in all of football, and it was a guy that bailed out Matt Ryan a lot with those 50-50 balls that he caught throughout his career. But I know Ryan loses him. I know he gets Kyle Pitts, who's one of the best tight end prospects in the last 10 seasons in the NFL here. And now he lost Todd Gurley, but you get Mike Davis in the backfield, which I think is an upgrade. We saw Mike Davis last year have a big year filling in for Christian McCaffrey, so he's the bell cow over there in Atlanta. And last season for Ryan, 4,581 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 92 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So Matt Ryan, each and every season, he's one of the best yard passing quarterbacks in the league. But I feel like he leaves a lot of touchdowns out there, is Ryan. And this season, they're projecting him 4,125 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. So he's another quarterback going anywhere from the 12th to the 13th round in most leagues, maybe a little earlier, 10th or 11th round as well. But right now, he's ranked 16th in my rankings. I still could see him having a good year, but losing Julio Jones, in my opinion, he's definitely going to take a little bit of a step back, and the numbers are going to go down. The next quarterback's Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans. So a lot of off-the-field issues coming into the year with Watson. We don't know what the deal is. There's reports he might avoid the commissioner ban list, exempt list this season, but who knows? We got to take a wait-and-see approach, and right now, he's a guy I'm not going to draft, obviously, in your basic 10 to 12 team leagues. Obviously, deeper leagues, or if you want to get him as a backup, if it's him or another guy down in the rankings, because obviously Watson, one hell of a talent he is, no doubt about it, but with all the problems now, we just don't know what his uncertainty. Last season, 4,823 yards, 33 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 444 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. So obviously he's a dynamic quarterback. He makes plays, and he makes a lot of nothing into something like he did with the Texans last year. Well, obviously without Hopkins, but entering the season, he's just a guy I can't trust as Watson. But if he does play, he'll put up numbers. But right now I got him ranked at number 17. 18, Baker Mayfield of the Cleveland Browns. So Baker Mayfield, he was a quarterback I said to avoid going into fantasy drafts. And obviously I got him at number 18. So most 12-team leagues, if you're not going to carry a backup, he's going to be a guy that's not going to be drafted in your leagues is Baker Mayfield. Right now, he's going anywhere from the 12th to the 14th round in most fantasy leagues. And no doubt about it, last year, Baker Mayfield, he had a great season with the Browns here. 3,563 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 in those, 165 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. But another guy who has inconsistent games and who has great games is Baker Mayfield. But this season, I think more teams are going to pay attention. They're going to play harder versus the Browns. And I think they didn't take them as a threat, especially once Odell Beckham went down early in the season with the torn ACL. But right here, gets Beckham back. I know they got Jarvis Landry, but those guys have been disappointed, in my opinion, over the last couple seasons here for this Brown team. But right here, Baker Mayfield, I got him in number 18 coming into the year. I think he could be a decent quarterback, especially in 2 quarterback leagues as your number 2 guy. I don't think that's horrible, but in single quarterback 10 to 12 team leagues, I don't think he's going to put up huge numbers. And he's a quarterback that'll have a mediocre year, in my opinion. So I got him at 18. Number 19, Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 pick in the NFL draft this season, and he goes to Jacksonville. That obviously they got Urban Meyer now as their head coach, and Trevor Lawrence, he could surprise a lot of guys, and this guy don't lose a lot of games throughout his college and high school career, but now he's in the bigs. But right now, so many great and talented quarterbacks this season that I'm just going to put him at number 19 right now. In my opinion, I think he could finish top 12 if he gets hot or just has that big rookie season here is Lawrence. And they're projecting him this season 4,055 pass yards, 28 touchdowns, 12 in those, 245 rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns. Over there in Jacksonville, they got a pretty decent offense. They got James Robinson, who was a great breakout running back last season. They got Travis Etienne, who obviously played college football in Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, and he's going to be a big part of that offense as the third down and receiving back over there. And also you got Marvin Jones they signed in the offseason. You got DJ Chark, who's been a pretty decent receiver the first few seasons in the NFL. So he's got some weapons over there as Lawrence, but he's a rookie, obviously. There's going to be inconsistencies. And I'll give you this, the division isn't that great. The Houston Texans are going to have a bad year. The Colts, we'll see what happens if Carson Wentz is going to be 100% over there. So right here, maybe he can make noise, maybe he can make some plays. But Tennessee Titans, obviously the class of this division here as well. But Trevor Lawrence, we're going to see some big games out of him, in my opinion, and we're going to see some mediocre to poor games out of him. But right now, coming into the season, I got him number 19 and number 20, Trey Lance of the San Francisco 49ers. This guy, if they give him the keys to the offense and let him start from week 1, which, in my opinion, I think week 3 or 4 this kid's going to start, even though he's been impressive so far in the preseason here is Lance. It's sky's the limit for him where he could have a huge fantasy season. The projections for him, 3,280 yards, 27 touchdowns, 14 in those, 710 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns. So this guy, he's a dual threat quarterback who can run for big yards and has a big cannon as well. And he's in an offense with a lot of good weapons. You got Trey Sermon, a good running back they drafted. You got Raheem Mostert. If he stays healthy, this guy's very explosive and puts up numbers. You got Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, who was very impressive last season, and a top 3 tight end in George Kittle, who obviously just has to stay healthy this year. So right here, if Trey Lance is the starter coming into the year, he definitely could put up top 12 quarterback numbers when it's all said and done this season. But right now, I got him in number 20 because we don't know if it's him or Jimmy G for sure that's going to start here for San Francisco. But if Trey Lance starts and we get word in the next couple weeks here before drafts or right on your draft days, this guy definitely could be a huge steal and a guy you'll probably target in the 10th to the 12th round in your fantasy league. So the top 20 quarterback rankings entering the fantasy football 2021 season.